What's up guys, Jay's 2 cents coming at you here on the Cars and Vlog channel, and I want to thank each and every one of you first and foremost for subscribing here, because this channel is not my livelihood. This channel is nothing more than me sharing a passion about something with you guys. It's an escape from the PC stuff. As much as I love computers, I love building the computers, I love doing the reviews, but that's my livelihood, and that's turned into business and something that I have to get away from, and that's what my cars have been. I was hugely into fun cars, but never had the money to do anything with them, and I spent the last 9 years with nothing more than grocery getters and practical family cars. So getting back into the cars and getting into the Z platform has been a huge thing for me. And I'll do a video about the cars I used to have and the fact of why I like the Z platform. I'm not even like a huge JDM guy. I just love the Z platform, but that's for another video. I mentioned in the video where I did the diffuser that I had some suspension stuff coming up here on the channel, and that's what we're gonna be doing today. And it might end up being a couple of videos, I'm not sure yet. The nice thing about having a garage finally is I can start something and then don't have to finish it, because I can just close the garage and leave it a mess. This is my domain, this is my area, this is a man's area. But before, I used to have to do all the work in the driveway, and I couldn't leave it torn apart because it was in the driveway. So that's why today I am starting the process of installing my MCA coilovers, and this is actually a rear coilover, a true coilover conversion for the Z car. So we are taking a set of MCA Reds right here, which are custom valved, custom spring setup, hand built in Australia, by the way. But these are not even available in the United States, which makes this even more exciting. But anyway, we'll get back to that in a minute. Ideally, doing this install up on a lift would be best, but obviously I don't have a lift. And this is gonna take me a couple of days, and I actually want Coconut Monkey's help. I'm just preparing for it today. Now what I wanna do today is get some of the front ready to go. I could do the whole front install if I don't suffer from the Godzilla bolt. Yeah, apparently the lower control arm on the front right there, and trust me guys, that's not the ride height of the car. There's a jack stand under it. The car is on jack stands already, so please, yeah, ride height is, I care about ride height, but that's ridiculous. So this is one of the front coilovers right here. It replaces the strut, and where this guy right here mounts down into the lower control arm, pretty much was torqued down by Godzilla himself, which is why they have dubbed it the Godzilla bolt. Now factory torque specs on that is 120 foot-pounds of force, but some folks have actually measured over 250 foot-pounds to get the bolt off. Yeah. So what that means is I had to go and I had to buy some high strength 6-point half-inch sockets. I didn't actually have any 6 points, they were all 12 point. 12 points can round that out. So I need to see if I can even get that bolt off. If I can't, I have to take it to my buddies over at Rogers Exhaust Shop, put it on the lift, see if we can break it loose, and then come back here and do the install myself. So that's really today's goal. Can I get that fucking bolt off? I don't know, let's find out. Now a moment ago I mentioned that these are true coilovers in the rear. What I mean by that is the rear of this car, and I'll show you in a second, is not a coilover. It's actually a split design where it's an inboard spring with a damper mounted to the control arm, and then the spring has its own arm and bucket. And a true coilover moves everything back together, but it also complicates things just a little bit. Yeah, the 285s are pretty wide, but I'm thinking I might bump this up to 295 or even 305. We'll see. Still a lot of meat left on these Bridgestone RE11s. Awesome street tire, by the way. So here's what the suspension looks like in the rear, and this is what I mean by it being a split design here. So the spring has its own spring bucket right there, and then the damper is up above it, up there in the perch. So when you move the spring from here up to there, you're actually changing a little bit of the dynamic here in the back, but it does make ride height adjustment super easy. But because we're removing the spring from here, that means we're gonna replace this arm. This is also the arm that controls all of the toe adjustment in the rear. So we are putting SPL titanium toe arms in here. And then the camber arm, which is this guy, this little bitty guy right there, little bitty guy. We're gonna be replacing that as well with SPL titanium camber arms and then eccentric lockout, so that we won't be using the eccentric bolts anymore to control the actual camber and toe adjustment. We're gonna be using the arms that are actual adjustable. So we'll be putting a lockout kit on there so that won't move anymore. And then we will have actually beefed up the rear quite a bit. So here's the front suspension, the front strut, and this is the Godzilla bolt right there. So I do have penetrating oil and stuff right now. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the wheel so I have a little bit more clearance here with the brake rotor out of the way. And then I'm gonna see if I can break this loose. This bolt, this one bolt right here, could end up being the one that delays this project, and that would really suck. I don't want to pay someone to do this. Suspension's easy to do. Well, I got good news. All it took was a 2-foot breaker bar and another 2-foot cheater bar to get that bolt to move, and it is not appear to be rounding out. So let me go ahead and see if I can get it off completely, and then we are in business. All right, so all I gotta do now is remove the factory strut bar. So I gotta do these 3 bolts here. There's some bolts under the cowl plastic and then bolts on the other side. And then we can get to the actual strut tower bolts, which are down there. All right, so now that that's off and out of the way, we can go ahead and loosen up our bolts here. We don't want these to come off yet entirely. And before I actually loosen those, each time I do it, I wanna put a jack or something underneath the tire, or the rotor, I should say, or the arm, to keep it from pulling down on these bolts right here. I want to keep it supported underneath. That way, as I loosen them, it's not putting all that tension on those threads as the nuts are working their way up. And then for jobs like that, I've just got this cheap, well, it's actually not that cheap because it's Craftsman, little small jack here, and I just support the control arm, again, because the only thing keeping the suspension droop, what lets it droop at its max, is the shock absorber and strut, or the entire assembly. So as you loosen it from the top, it starts to pull down, at least the spring starts to push against those nuts, and you don't want to strip them. So always support the bottom of the control arm when you're undoing it. The nuts are removed from the top of the strut tower. Now we need to undo our brake lines and our ABS line and get those out of the way, because as you can see right there, they are attached to the assembly. So we want to make sure those don't get yanked on. And then on the bottom of the control arm, there's 3 14mm bolts on that black plate. And then we undo the 19mm bolt, and the entire thing will come out as a single assembly. Now on this side of the strut, this is the ABS line right here. It's just rubber and literally fits inside there. You just pull these out, push those out of the way, because you don't want anything attached to the assembly when you pull it out. Breaking these would be a bad day, getting your ABS repaired. All right, so once you get all those 14mm out, you'll notice this guy is attached, and just pull that off. And then you'll see that the bolt that goes through the bottom of the shock mount, or the bottom of the shock assembly, is actually part of the tie rod, or not the tie rod, but the end link for the sway bar right there. So that is one big piece, and you might have to play with some of the tension here with your jack holding up your control arm so that this bolt isn't under too much pressure. And then what you'll have to do is take probably a mallet or some sort of dead blow hammer and pound that out. It's actually kind of a pain in the ass. But if you're having a hard time getting it out, that's why. That sway bar, even when the car is resting, is still under some tension. All right, so once the OEM strut is removed, you literally take your coilover, make sure you have your left and your right side properly. There is a left and a right to these, and you're gonna be able to tell that by the actual ABS line and the brake line. The brake line part that the block attaches to is going to point towards the rear of the car, so that's how you know right and left. But beyond that, check your manual for your OEM or your new coilover setup. Put everything in the reverse order that you took it out, and then the fronts are pretty much done. So you ever just think to yourself that you're completely bad luck? It seems like no matter what project I do, something always hits the fan, which is kind of what makes this fun in a sort of sadomasochist kind of way. So the suspension is completely on the front right. The suspension is really easy to install. I mean, it took maybe 30 minutes on that side to get the old one out and the new one in, 15 minutes on the driver's side to get that one out, 10 minutes to put the new one in, 5 minutes to torque everything down, only to have one of the shock studs, as you can see right there, snap before we even got to 60 foot-pounds, which is what the spec is on the top of the shock tower. So right now I am on my way to Fontana Nissan Race Shop to get them to help me fix a broken bolt in one of the shocks for Nizzy that I was installing. I over torqued the bitch. I misread the diagram and it thought it was 60. Turns out it's 30. So I broke a bolt. And yeah, so if you've been following on Instagram or Twitter or any of that stuff, and you guys saw that, you know, I was like, damn it, I broke a bolt. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that it's not MCA's fault. It's really not. I'm the idiot that torqued the bolt to twice what spec says,
And of course the damn thing broke. Fortunately, it's just the bolt in the shock mount, so that can be pressed out and a new one can be put in and then we'll be good to go. But anyway, I figured I would do some research on the company, and it turns out they are highly respected in Australia. Like I said, they're not available in the US. And I saw a lot of folks on the Australia forums for the Z platform, like the Z34, saying that they were taking off their KWs and other high-end brands because they liked the MCAs that much more. So I figured, what the heck, man. Oh, if you're hearing that clinging, by the way, my old exhaust for the Z is still in the back of my Durango here, aka the Sherman tank.
All right, there we go. There's the one that I had to replace the bolt in. It is now installed. Can't really see it, it's too dark. But anyway, there it is. You can see the one black bolt chilling there. But it's in, so now what I gotta do is put the strut tower back on, and then I can drop the car and see what the ride height is like and start adjusting the ride height. And one of the things that makes the MCA suspension a little different than standard coilovers is the fact that you don't actually control the ride height by the shock body. Some coilovers you reduce or you loosen that and you thread the shock body up and down inside the receiver there, and then that's how you adjust the ride height. On this one, they actually explicitly say you have to adjust the ride height here with the spring perch, which is interesting because most of the time that's considered preload. So I'm really curious to see how this handles and how it feels. All right, so it's all back together, and you can see the ride height in the front is still pretty much stock. That's about a 2-inch gap right there. But I haven't driven the car yet. The baby is asleep, and I can't start the car when she's asleep. It's just too damn loud. So when she wakes up, I'll take it for a test drive. Slow at first, make sure everything's good, no weird noises or anything. I did torque everything perfectly to spec. I double checked and triple checked this time, trust me. And then we'll see where it settles and we'll adjust the height. What I'm going for here in ride height is I really am looking for about half that gap. So I want the fender to be about right here, just to get the center of gravity a little bit lower, about a 3/4 of an inch drop. Anywhere between half to 3/4 is pretty much ideal. The back of the car, I don't really want that to come down too far either. I'm thinking maybe a 1/2 inch in the back at most. This is not about stance, this is not about flush or hella flush or any of that bullshit. This is literally just about performance here, and that's exactly what these coils are built for. So we will test that out, but we'll let the car settle, take it for a little drive when the baby wakes up, and then we'll see how much it's actually changed. Ground to fender is sitting at 27.5 inches off the ground. So we'll see how much it settled after the test drive. All right, so I just took it for a test drive, and I am absolutely blown away so far by what I have just experienced with only the front coils in. I haven't even done the rear yet. So that's where I'm at after the test drive. You can see it really didn't change. I mean, it's at 1 3/4 inch gap right there. And remember, distance from the ground was 27.5 on the fender, 27.5. So that test drive did nothing for the settling of the suspension, which is kind of a good thing. It means the suspension didn't need to settle. The moment it took on the weight of the car, it went where it needed to go and was ready to go. That is amazing. I can't wait to get the rears in. I'm still waiting on the arms to get here. They are supposed to arrive today. I'm waiting for Nissan to call me and tell me that they came in, and then can't actually get those installed until this weekend. Anyway, I'm gonna jack this back up on the front. I'm gonna take the wheels off, and I'm gonna bring it down about maybe just over a 1/2 inch. We'll see. I do want to bring it down just slightly. All right, so that's where I settled on the ride height on the front. I might come up a 1/4 inch, but anyway, that is all for today. If you guys want to see how the rear suspension goes together, well, then you're just gonna have to check out the next video. Yep, we're doing one of these multi-parters that are to be continued. So with that, let the hate flow through you. See you next time.